So we've used none a few times already, so it's about time to start explaining what none is. Well, none is an object, a Python object. So I can I can bind some variable name x to none, and I can ask to print x. And when x is printed fully, it prints none. And when I just enter x in interactive mode, nothing is printed. So if I convert none, for instance, to a Boolean, I get false. And this is useful for doing some conditional tests. It's useful to know in order to do some conditional tests. So, for instance, I can do this. I can do this type of code, and it's useful to understand what's going on. So here I have some tests that test whether x is an integer and greater than 5, or if x is an integer, or if all of those fail, I do something else. So in this case, x is nothing of those, so it will print x is not an integer. Now, x didn't really have a value. The value, well, it had a value, the value of none, and that's the point. We couldn't really assign any meaningful value, so we assigned none instead. And what's the gain? Well, the gain is that we can start doing tests like this because x is well defined, so we can actually use the variable name x and we don't get into trouble. Right? If I don't do this and I just test if y is greater than 5, I get an error because the name y is not defined. But if I do y equals none and test whether y is greater than 5, this gives me false. So here is an example of a way you could use it. I'll define a new function called person. So sorry here for the mingling. It's clearer on the left. And the way this person works is that you enter a name and maybe a login and some other arguments, some other parameters. And the login might be none or it might be something else. And if the login is none, if the login is something else, then you just keep it. But if the login is none, then you should do something. You should create a login for that person, and you create based on the name. So you remove all the special characters essentially, and you lowercase it. And there you go. You have a login. So let's see this here. I enter information about a new person, myself, with a birth year and a status, and you see here that I have a login that is now Paul-Olivier Dehaye because that login was generated automatically from my name. If instead I prefer to enter a login directly, well, that's also possible, and that works as well. So you see that here the point of none was to allow for some optional parameter and to allow for some testing within the body of the function without breaking anything. So in any case, I use none to do an assignment, so whatever happens here, I know that at this stage, login is assigned. It might be assigned the value none, but some value is assigned, and I can start using it. That's really the point of none.